Swayam Prabha. Digital India. Educated India.
Hi, today we start this entire course on marketing management with a VUCA perspective, and we are going to start with the fundamentals bit. I am your instructor Siddhi Bhattacharya, and welcome to the first module. Now, if I were to quote a very famous author and thinker of the 20th century, Milan Kundera, he has mentioned that business has only two functions. One is that of marketing and the other is that of innovation. Business constantly keeps changing and evolving thanks to the critical thinking, thanks to the abilities that we bring into business and help it improve, solve better problems, bigger challenges, and move into the future with the organization climbing up every rung of the success ladder as it goes forward. So therefore, the question that arises is whether business can work in isolation. Definitely not. Businesses require interactions. Businesses are born out of human thought, human intellect, and so therefore they are supposed to interact with other people, with scenarios, with countries, with requirements, and keep evolving as time passes. So these transactions and these interactions between buyers, sellers, economies, countries, and mindsets is something which cannot be missed. It is inevitable. This leads to something which we feel is very important to understand today, especially in a world which is fast becoming a globalized economy, and so therefore the challenges also arise in a similar way. The problem of unpredictability. This is business's biggest challenge so far. And in a world where people meet, ideas meet, mindsets meet, you have a terrible problem of a lot of challenges coming your way. So when businesses and its processes face scenarios that showcase the operating environment suddenly changes, it becomes very, very dangerous, and that unpredictability is what most managers end up managing throughout their careers, whether the problem being very small and immediate or something which lies far into the distant future, and only through your vision and your forbearing attitude can you actually look into that particular scenario and solve it beforehand, before it even arrives at your doorstep. Therefore, this entire course starts with the preamble to marketing. You need to get into why market forces at play are important, and that leads you to the entire discourse on marketing going further into the course. So why this is important? This is a critical thing which people need to understand and internalize, and in our world today it has become increasingly a more and more difficult space where people try to conduct their business in, and a lot many factors come and affect people and the way they want to do their business, and there are challenges which stop them from reaching their intended goals and objectives. The first thing which we have noticed in recent times is financial downturns and recessions. Starting in 2008, when the great subprime collapse happened and the ripple effects were felt all across the world, this started a scenario which has led from one to the other. In the middle, we have seen enough and more of wars. We have seen enough and more of geopolitical strife and upheavals, dictators coming in, governments getting couped and uprooted, people moving from one to the other location in times of misery, in times of climatic conditions. We have very recently come out of a global pandemic. All of these factors have pushed us to think our bearings, our moorings very, very clearly, and to decide which way the entire world, the business we are in, and what comes of it, all of these factors taken together should go. Again, we live on a planet which has limited resources. So therefore, Resources must be rationed, they must be clearly thought through. We must look for better alternatives as we go forward, and hence we need to always plan for the future. Also, as responsible organizations and our roles as managers in those organizations, we must think of what we must do that is ethically correct and how we leave behind a world that flourishes for our next generations. So, these are considerations which people bring into bear, and automatically when we want to run our business, the most important thing that comes into mind is energy needs. Today fossil fuels are depleting. We have moved on to lithium and polymer based battery systems. We are moving to solar, we are moving to wind, we are moving to geoshock based power systems which use wave from the seas, etc. And all these things build into newer ways of storing and utilizing energy the way we want it. As our civilization grows and prospers, in the future, in the maybe distant future, we might even see a Dyson sphere which encompasses the entire sun and utilizes the entire energy that the sun has and harnesses it for our civilizational growth and prosperity. We also see a lot of technological shifts. Earlier on, we had about 300,000 years for man to invent the wheel. From the wheel to the chariot was about some 5,000 years at least in recorded history. And then thereafter the technological advances grew by leaps and bounds. The speed was exponential. The speed at which technology is shifting today is light speed. It's very, very fast. Today, if you have a technology, chances are that it is already obsolete. So, we need to shift our mindset and adapt to technological shifts because they will pass us by before even we can blink our eyes, and which also results in disruptive market shifts. You think of a technology, you bring out an innovation, and even before the market has actually grasped it and used it, something else comes and pips it out of its pole position. So, that impacts the socio-cultural fabric of not just nations, but of the entire planet. There are rifts between the rich, the poor, the needy, the over capable, the people who have a lot at their hands, the super rich, and all these create a lot of strife amongst different facets of society, which also must be thought through. And finally, like I spoke of before, environmental and climatic conditions. These are considerations we must also take into our fold while we plan our business and how it will prosper and give back to society in the future. So, all of these factors and maybe some more which I may not have covered here are part of the importance of why today's world is about being always aware, always looking around ourselves and being ready for something that prepares us for the business of the future, the next wave that is going to come our way. So, coming down to the core of what this entire conversation is about, VUCA, we need to understand what VUCA really means. And this is where we land at. VUCA is composed of these four very, very clear words. One is volatility. Volatility typically means that something which is very quickly going to change and you can't predict that particular change. So, volatility is when you are suddenly sitting basking in a sunny sun and then the next moment you see rain clouds on the horizon and a thunderstorm brews up. Similarly, in the business scenario, if there are sudden occurrences which shake your way of conducting business, it affects the people who actually bring in the work that you do, who are your customers, the kind of money they use to transact, the geographical positions and locations where they come from, your trade routes, the way you particularly pass your trade from one place to the other, a lot of factors which we have covered in the last conversation, all of these things can suddenly shift the balance, and that leads to a world which is perpetually volatile. The managers of today and tomorrow will have to be prepared and mentally aware that volatility is a given fact and we cannot do without it. So, we must look at volatility as something which is part of the equation and hence plan with enough safeguards in place so that we manage volatility to the best of our ability. And this is where the next thing, which is uncertainty, that also comes into consideration. Uncertainty lets us understand that we have to prepare for multiple scenarios. What if scenarios? I'm sure a lot of pop culture and social media would have actually thrown a what if thinking into your perspective, and that also applies to business at large. You have to prepare for things that could be and things that you may not have thought through, but you need to have prepared, which leads to a lot of risk and its management. So uncertainty helps the manager of today and tomorrow prepare for eventualities which may come their way, sudden changes in pricing, lack of raw products because there has been a geographical shake-up, some power outage in a particular area stopping factory, pandemics stopping work life at large, geopolitical upheavals which have impacted your logistics, and maybe even the price of oil. So a variety of things like this can actually impact the flow of how your business is run, and you must have enough and more stashed away, enough and more reparative considerations taken, and plan Bs, Cs, Ds and so on and so forth, so that not at any point in time do you get painted into a corner, do you get actually shut out of being able to continue doing the business that you are in. This entire scenario brings us to the core concept of complexity. If we think that doing business is a very simple task, here is a customer, here is a provider, you make the trade between the two and your business is done, that unfortunately is not how rosy life actually looks like. Life actually has a lot many more factors. You have to consider how innovative your product is. You have to consider how well people will receive it. You have to consider how competition will wake up to you. You also have to consider a variety of other factors, pricing, your market forces, the need, the actual ability for you to be continuously able to churn out that product or service, whichever it is. And all of these factors lead to the complexity, and your consumer suddenly one fine day wake up and say, no, I don't want this product. So what do you do then? Factors like this, things that are not known to you, which you cannot predict but only prepare for, leads us to the fourth scenario called ambiguity, things that are not known to you. Hence, alongside critical thinking, there is also the other more important factor that marketers and as well as general management people need to pick and imbibe into their daily work, is the ability to think creatively. They should be able to imagine scenarios, and with those scenarios in place, they should be able to plan how to actually manage and navigate through those particular scenarios. So all of these factors together form VUCA, and in a nutshell, what I've tried to explain here is ways in which managers who are capable think and probably address this particular entire scenario and the world we live in and try and do very, very profitable business in. The faster you are able to adapt, the more agile you are as a manager, as a thinker, the more adept you will be at managing this kind of a very, very volatile, uncertain, complex and ambiguous scenario. So moving on from VUCA, this is what we have in our portfolio today. We will cover market forces. We'll also take you through an introduction of VUCA. We'll showcase how managing markets is important and how we can go about doing things in markets, which are factors that will affect the market, and how the impact of VUCA actually has shifted the thinking of a variety of managers, and they have to prepare for such eventualities going further. So moving on, we are going to market forces first. So if you are to read the market, and I have prepared a certain list of what managers today need to think of, and that helps them prepare for the market and understanding the market forces that are there. This is not by any measure an exhaustive list, but this gives you a fair idea of a variety of subject areas which you need to consider. And if you think that you have thought through everything, go back to the drawing board and check, because that is an ability which any good manager will have. They always check their fundamentals. The fundamentals are important so that you minimize the lack of knowledge which leads to risk. And that risk minimization is something which helps you prepare for eventualities, scenarios, and create backup plans, create contingencies, and create space for exigencies as and when they may arise. However deep you think on these things will actually show how robust you are when you are actually facing such problems. So the first thing we have under consideration today is demand and supply. This is the most fundamental consideration, because any trade, since ever trade was there on the planet, has been about demand and has been about supply. So both these things taken into consideration defines how managers assess where they are making and thereafter marketing their products, and who are actually the consumers that seek, and where can we reach them, where can we find them, where can we speak with them, how can we showcase our products to them, and how can we ensure that they accept what we have on offer. The second part is disruptions. Yes, disruptions come in a variety of ways. Yes, we've talked about armed conflict, yes, we've talked about climatic conditions, we've talked about economic recession, etc. But technology and what technology brings, the speed at which it brings it, is also a certain shock which businesses must prepare for, because technological advancement changes consumption habits, it changes the perspective of people, it changes the way people do things, it changes the way people perceive their reality. And so therefore, preparing and being ahead of the game when it comes to technological disruptions is also something which companies and their managers must think, and they need to prepare workarounds. If Nokia, for example, had decided that they would create a touch screen, Apple wouldn't have been where it was, but Nokia stuck with their QWERTY keyboard, and hence Apple found a particular niche, a particular gap which they ably walked into and filled, and their quality, their product design, all of those aspects covered the gaps that were being felt by people, by consumers. And so that's where Apple gained its initial popularity from, and then the rest, as you know, is history. So moving forward, the other aspect is that as managers, like I was mentioning before, we need to realize that at the core of doing business, complexity is a given, and this is the core concept of VUCA. So increasingly, decision making has to come from considering a variety of data points, and thankfully we have a companion nowadays which is come in and which is going to grow in size and strength as we go forward: data and its management, and hence the birth of AI and machine learning. So we may not need to do all the heavy lifting, but looking at trends, looking at inferences from what that data and its interpretation comes at us, we may be able to plan for scenarios, we may be able to plan for possibilities that actually help us ride the wave, or even go ahead of it and prepare the ground so that when the wave crashes, the entire output, the energy of the wave comes our way, and we are able to harness what it brings to us. We are able to bring in all the catch of fish that maybe the wave has carried forth on shore. The next part is omni-channel. Now, people no longer are bound by geographies. They do not just stay within a city or travel to another and are only contactable by phone or by email. Nowadays, people are always on, they're always connected. Network connectivity, and if not there, then satellite connectivity has reached everywhere. India doesn't have Starlink yet, but most of the developed countries already have Starlink. So even if you are in a jungle area, you with a sat phone can patch up to internet and actually send a message out. And it comes very, very quick, obviously at a certain cost, but still you are connected. So omni-channel actually helps prepare business presentation to a consumer at any given point in time, wherever they are. And it also helps you prepare and present a unified face. Your website, your telecaller channel, your mobile presence, your app, your content, all of it embodies the vision, the purpose, the language, the codes that the brand actually tries to proposition its clients with, its customers with. And so therefore, omnichannel helps you keep that consistency of experience across all formats. And that's why it helps build a certain sanity, and the way people look at you as a brand, as an organization, as a provider, they then see that, hey, this person stays the same, and they talk the same, and they mean the same, and therefore they are trustworthy. They don't change, they don't suddenly become something else. So those factors are things that keep it very, very relevant for the audiences, your customers. The next part is taking from omnichannel about ethics and societal impact. You know that nowadays children are watching a lot of content on their phones, or their parents' phones for that matter. Now that has created a lot of psychological and technological problems for parents. Parents need their personal time, so they hand out the phone to the child, but the child is consuming and consuming data. So hence, at that point in time, is it right for that child to be on screen for such a long period of time? And if so, what is the kind of content that they are watching? Who is marshalling and policing that particular content? Is that content actually worth the while? And is looking at a screen always something very good for a child who's developing, who's thinking, who's building their capabilities and faculties? So all of these considerations are an aspect of ethics that companies should think of, especially people who are very, very customer facing, and the impact on society. So all of these factors build up, and by these examples I'm just trying to tell you that ethics and social impact are things that organizations must consider, and alongside the kind of world that we will leave behind for our children, for our generations that are yet to come. The environmental, cultural factors are very, very important. If we do not provide sufficient energy, food, water, the shortage of all these things can lead to mass migrations. They can shift populations. They can, in the future, we hope that we do not get to see the day when mass migrations happen, when people come looking just for drinkable and potable water. And that is something which is terrifying. So we need to figure out ways that we are solving those problems today so that they do not occur in the future. Organizations, providers, thinkers who can solve these problems will be held in high regard as we go forward. So organizations need to think of what problems they are solving, and all of these things that we've spoken of so far give us a taste, a general understanding of a variety of situations, a variety of scenarios that must be considered at a broad level for managers to push their organizations in the right direction, keeping themselves relevant and keeping themselves connected with needs that a consumer may actually have. So from here we move on to the next segment, which is VUCA, and we introduce you to what VUCA is and how it really creates impact in our lives. There are global phenomena, and in fact their implication is very local. If you've seen during COVID, India produced 2 vaccines. We were the only country in the world other than the US which actually had multiple vaccines being developed. One was completely developed inside of our geographical borders. The other was with Oxford's technology coming and mass produced in India. So the abilities that, and the resilience and the alacrity with which we actually reacted to the scenario in front of us, the way we put and imposed lockdowns, the way we managed our economy during a moment of crisis, the way we ensured that despite such huge tragedy, our population did not suffer as much as was forecast or as much was feared, is by itself a showcase of how resilient, how thoughtful, how brilliantly we have been able to manage a terrible, terrible tragedy. So these have actually pushed people to shift their behavior in varieties of ways. People have moved from using cash, which required physical contact, to having digital currency, which actually gives them the ability to sit anywhere and remotely pay. And it also gives a track of how the currency is moving. So, all of these factors have been capitalized on, and in fact, India is one of the leaders, the world leaders in the digital currency transaction market. The UPI being one of the things that has been very, very widely accepted and is gaining ground as India surges forward in that particular space. Also, in terms of policy, we had the dogma and the weight of colonial past, and a lot of policies were there which have been slowly chipped away, and those policies from the government's point of view have been changed, have been amended, have been shifted. Space has been made so that something which is practical, something which is today, has been brought into play. So, these factors have been brought in so that we are ready to meet the challenges of uncertainty, something which is complex and has to be simplified so that we are able to actually solve the problem. And we are also looking at a variety of shifts. If you travel, you will see in cities which are in hinterlands in India, you will see that the cleaning of rivers has actually affected the beauty and the serenity of those spaces. People have actually taken up cleanliness, which was thought to be an impossible task in India, and the impact of it has been seen and is currently being propagated on the ground. So, these are aspects which people have actually brought into play and are capitalizing, and they are going hammer and tongs at it. So, and with all these things, you are also seeing that socio-cultural norms are changing. Things where requirement is the necessity actually begets innovation. So, that innovation is now acceptable, and people are shifting their mindset to welcome the change, and new essentials are driving the demand. Local incidents are actually affecting global logistics. So, if the Suez Canal got blocked, trade worldwide was affected. If Taiwan has a problem, microchips do not reach other manufacturers worldwide. If there is an oil embargo, you do not get oil, and everything, the inflation goes up because everything is oil and energy related. So, these are factors that are probably with local and near about implications, but their impact is felt the world over. So, factors like this have to be prepared for and have to be met with logical, critical thinking and quick, swift, decisive action. So, this is something that brings us to the understanding of how markets are placed and how we can actually look at markets and manage them better, especially in a VUCA space. Now, I am sure people here have heard of, if not fully understand, what a red ocean and a blue ocean concept are. A red ocean is a place which has similar products, a lot many more competitors, and it also gives you very, very little room to expand, to thrive. Whereas a blue ocean, which you can create through innovation, through a certain amount of disruption, gives you more legroom, it gives you lesser competition, and it allows you to thrive and create a name and a standing for yourself. Yes, you will have to slice and dice the consumer audience so that you get the right kind, the right minded people to come and join with you and make your organization bigger and better. And so, therefore, those shifts are what are increasingly making marketing complex, but the manager who is able to think these parts through is able to actually create that shift, that innovation, that niche creation faster, and helps their organization reach those particular heights in a much more structured and organized way. And such managers are also able to spot trends. You are able to see the bent of the road, you are able to see which way trends are shifting, and so therefore, you are able to innovate and disrupt the market. You are able to bring in cloud kitchens, you are able to bring in local warehousing and provide typical what Amazon did in one day, Zepto and Blinkit are doing in 10 minutes. So, that local warehousing chain, storage and providing facilities, etc., are things that were there, people were asking for that kind of service, and they were ready to pay a little premium. And organizations which found out that particular niche and captured before anybody else moved in have now had first mover advantage. So they have moved ahead, they have surged ahead in fact, and they have garnered a space for themselves. Now, with all of these things, how do you continuously keep your consumer clued in, continuously able to interact with you? You build an experience that simplifies the larger complex problem and gives them exactly what they're thinking for, what they're expecting, and you're giving them a seamless experience. So the user experience has to be continuously worked upon, and customers do not really have the bandwidth and time anymore for something which detracts them from whatever they're doing, whatever the immediate purpose is. So hence that lifetime value of repeat customers is something you have to build, so that every single time they depend on you for that particular said service, and your repeat sale value always keeps coming, and these people then start talking about you and propagating you as a brand, as an organization which is worth the while, and so they get more and more people to join up. So this increases not only the value of what they will buy from you, but also in the deferred value of how many people they will bring onto the bandwagon. So all of these aspects together help you create a certain branding, a certain positioning, a certain respect, and amongst customers a certain tribe, which will help you keep your organization in good stead. And finally, how different are you? What is your point of view that separates you from the crowd? How do you stand out? How do you look apart? How do you come across as somebody who is respected, valued, and at the end of the day, you deliver on what your promises were? You will have seen that a lot many more CEOs are now coming forth, and while their created brands are taking the center stage, their created brands are typically running the roost, they also have their own personal branding. They are seen outside there in public domain. They are seen doing a lot of things. They are seen engaging in the activities which are congruent with what they have as a business offering, or in terms of their personal space, the way they are looked at, the kind of entrepreneurs they are. Shark Tank being an example, where you see a lot many entrepreneurs who have made it large, helping other newer faces take flight with support, and also helping other people who get inspired by such ideas to actually understand what is on offer and how we have to structure our offerings, how we have to structure our plans and get to a point where we can action them and money will come. So hence the funding, etc., which people get nowadays from places like Shark Tank and other VC funds is structured. People are knowledgeable about these things, and at the same point in time, what really matters is the way a business person looks at what problem they are picking up to solve, how they are going about it, and their personal integrity and ethics. So therefore, the purpose of why you are here, what are you doing, and how are you delivering, and what impact will it have? All of these factors are then taken into consideration when they look at you as a whole. And these are aspects that are being seen widely, they are being respected for what they stand for, and that is garnering a lot many more eyeballs. People are seeing that, yes, hey, this person is somebody who means what they say, and they deliver on what they have promised. That increases the ability of the brand, of the human being, of the individual, and their enterprise that they embody, all of these things to take it on in a large way. So these are aspects that are increasingly making the marketing complex. But if you get the right drift, you're able to set yourself up to win. Because if you know the rules to play, you're able to already realize the challenges that will be there and how to work around them, how to walk the steps of what you need to do to achieve the best success you can. And finally, we come to the portion where you have to learn about how managing the impact of VUCA in your market forces and the environment of business around you will be something that is very, very critical, and this is something we'll expand on going further as well. But in today's conversation, we'll sort of cover this to a certain introductory degree. So, the first part we are covering is volatility. So, let us deep dive into volatility, because here rapid change is actually affecting the way you are able to do business, or you are being hindered. So, organizations, in the bid to survive and thrive in this murky and rapid flux, this change, this continuous shift of your logistics, the way consumers think, the technology that helps or hinders you, and the needs and demands of the market, etc., they tend to develop and depend on the skills and capabilities which keep them in relevant and fighting fit shape. So, therefore, the managers, the people who are part of the organization, how adept are they? How creatively can they attempt a challenge? And how in depth is their knowledge and their ability to assess the situation on the ground? How well are they able to utilize technology today, so that they are able to affect positive change? Here you will see examples like agile marketing teams. So, people know that mistakes are a given. Whenever you do work, the point of making a mistake is not to fret and fume over it. You will, if you are running, you will trip and fall. But then, like in the famous Christopher Nolan movie, Alfred tells the young Bruce Wayne, it's not about how we fall, Master Bruce. It's about how we pick ourselves, dust ourselves off and start running again. So, taking from a very pop culture theme, how Batman keeps improving himself until he almost reaches the extreme limit of a human being's physical and mental capabilities. Similarly, improving marketing, improving business processes depends on how agile and smart your teams are. Make a mistake, make it quick, learn from it faster, and deploy the learnings back into the system. Create a machine-like thought process, something which quickly learns and improves and continuously keeps doing so. And the fun part of this is that with the advent of AI and machine learning, this has become even faster. AI does a lot of heavy lifting for us, and we are able to actually take quick decisions and maybe take them even quicker. So, all of these things are getting propelled in the right kind of direction. The point here being that AI and ML should not be looked at as competition for human jobs. We need to improve ourselves. We have actually relegated a lot of our skills to machines, to other people, and we tend not to go and de-rigor look at certain aspects, look at certain problems, and how as a human being how our mind attempts at solving those. So, we need to revisit those aspects, bring in our skill sets and become the charioteer. AI and machine learning are the horses of the chariot. We need to be the charioteers controlling the process, so that we are able to execute certain things. We let certain decisions get taken, the heavy lifting get done by the AI and ML capabilities that we are blessed with, and the rest is for us to take a more creative, a more emotional decision on understanding the human condition and how we can move things forward. And that is why you need to think that strategy is not cast in stone. You need to be flexible about your strategy. You need to know when you want to shift, how you want to shift, which way you want to shift, and what are the reasons for that shift. If you are going to switch to a different kind of market, if you are going to switch to a different kind of target audience by economy, by demographic age, or by their ability to speak a certain language, what is actually fueling your particular decision? Is that decision right? What data do you have to prove it? So, all of these things you have to bring into consideration. Planning for the unplanned, you have to think about geopolitical shifts, populations moving from here to there, people going to urban areas or climbing back into rural areas because whatever is capable. During COVID times, there were a lot of people who went into the hills and they stayed there at homestays, they worked from there, they just needed internet connectivity and they managed. And they did quite well. They got cleaner air, obviously even the cities had cleaner air. But the way people adapted to a situation which was unthought of, unthinkable, because not anyone amongst us had experienced a pandemic before in our own lifetime, or at least in a couple of generations. It was completely we were unprepared. We had to adapt to what was coming our way at the drop of a hat. So those things helped us, and people who have actually managed it better, they managed to do it in a far more smarter, sharper way. And also which means that when you are, and because our attention spans are dropping, we are looking everywhere and our space is crammed with all sorts of messaging and information coming our way. Brands and organizations which want our attention, they need to talk to us in a certain way that incites a certain action. That action, if it is to the benefit of the brand, must be given to us, or as close as it can be, to the point where we are at the cusp of taking a decision. I want to brush my teeth. I am out of toothpaste. Can a brand at that point in time say, ping, hello, can you buy my toothpaste? I think you are out. And that immediately solves my problem. So the just in time campaign is something which is predictive at one point in time. It also uses data. Now this interaction actually allows people to voluntarily give data so that they are blessed with the solutions when they need it most. It's a catch-22. We can get into the details of it in further discussions, but yes, these are certain capabilities which come with ethical considerations, especially privacy and other matters, but they are also a blessing. So they are not entirely something which is a bane for modern times. Needs to be thought through. Brands, organizations and managers need to think these things through very, very clearly. And then how do you stay relevant? How do you keep bringing new products, bringing new offerings, telling your consumers that, hey, we are always at it, we are constantly improving, we are bringing things that are to your benefit, they solve these problems, maybe even solve a micro niche inside of that problem. And so therefore, there are launches, there are iterations and versions which keep improving. So the brand, the organization, the offering is seen as something which is constantly on the move, dynamic, and is actually able to make a positive shift towards people's lives and changing them for the better. The next aspect, uncertainty. So here data comes to our rescue, because if you are not aware and are unsure of what the outcomes will be, so therefore the one thing that you can take to your advantage is data. Data helps you give certain instances of what has happened, and so therefore it can help you chart a course, plot a path, give you certain forecasts and possibilities and scenarios which help you to define what could be and which would be for your benefit, or at least the most benefit, because at times we are stuck between choosing two bad things or two good things. So therefore the ability to choose the lesser evil or the higher good is something which data actually helps us with. So taking data driven decisions and utilizing data driven decision making as a skill set is something which is critically important for managers of today and tomorrow, and they need to bring that into their everyday, so that when they are doing this on a day in day out basis, they almost master it to a fine art level. And therefore that also leads us to the human condition, because humans are unpredictable again, they are uncertain in the way they will react. Today they are saying something, tomorrow they do something completely different. And so therefore the insights, the force that drives that particular decision inside of a human being or a large swath of human beings, for example a target audience, is something which we term as a fear, a desire, a certain moving force which pushes people to take a cumulative decision, and these are called insights. So therefore you are able to decode the consumer insights, you are able to predict that, hey, today they are in this particular stage of life, tomorrow they will probably want to do a certain few things in a certain few ways, and we are ready to address those particular capabilities, those particular ways, so that they are able to meet us as a provider and they are able to benefit from whatever products or solutions we are bringing to the fore. And if you have any contingencies, you plan for those with analytics. Now, analytics is, yes, data driven decisions, but it also helps you keep constant tabs on the lay of the land, what is going on right here, right now. So, it gives you real time output as close as it gets to actually being in the present here and now. And because it has interfaces which it picks data up from, so it allows you to speak with a certain kind of confidence that, hey, this is what is going to happen. These are the trends which showcase that this has been the precedent of a certain buying pattern. This is how the seasonality of a certain product goes. This is how monsoons may affect crops, hence affecting the riches of people or the lack of it and their ability to buy or not buy something. So, all of these aspects together, they have a lot of impact on consumers and therefore on their ability to buy and therefore on the products and therefore on the organization that make those products. It is a large chain. All of these factors are they can change at the drop of a hat, and that leads to the uncertainty. Analytics helps you keep tabs on the data coming in from your various sources and in real time. So, it helps you prepare that all those what if situations we spoke of, here analytics helps you prepare for all those what if situations. And this also helps you monitor what trends are going on. So, if you see fashion, for example, fashion, you can predict the colors of the next season for the next annual year also, the calendar year, and this typically happens. You can present certain styles for a certain fall or winter collection, or you can do it something for a spring and summer collection. So, these are things which help brands, which help organizations, which help also creative output giving people like designers to monitor and prepare what their offerings are going to be depending on the trends that they visualize for the market. And at the center of all of these things is the human being who, or the set of human beings who are running that particular organization. There is a constant belief system that they have in common amongst themselves, which they also project in the work that they do, in the conversations that they have, and it also drives the consumer to think of them in a very specific certain kind of way, and that draws them closer, and it provides that necessary guide rail that these people stand for this particular aspect. I will go to them because they are dependable. That over time, brick by brick, will help you establish yourself as a brand, as a particular capable heavyweight in that niche, in that particular sector, and it will give you dividends. And therefore, the core of the VUCA concept and also of today's business scenario, complexity. How do you address complexity? The first thing about complexity is that not every problem can be solved by you. You need to have teams of skilled people with a variety of strengths, maybe at times skills between different kinds of organizations who collaborate. So, it not necessarily means that teams should be only within the organization, try and build them there, but if not, then partner up with certain organizations who have a certain core competency that can come to your rescue and yours to theirs. So, it is a symbiotic relationship, and you then work together and create a collaboration using both sides' strengths. The help, like we spoke of, is AI, machine learning. You are able to create a lot more within the given time with a lot less in terms of input and manpower and resources. I am sure you will see even in this presentation a lot of images which are created, they are generated out of AI. So, that utility is something which you have at hand. You have to maximize the capabilities which you can lay your hands on. That is something which will help you in creating a certain niche, a certain kind of expected product quality and delivery, and it will help create a space where your experience, what you offer to your end consumer, is going to be simplified. they will love you for it. They will say, oh wow, I like what they are doing, I like the way they have structured it, they have solved my problems, they have showcased to me how my problem gets solved very, very easily, and this is the best way to do it. Nobody else could have done it any better. So all of these things are things that help you define that particular way of approaching a customer experience. And therefore, you want to improve your expertise, and therefore the partnerships we spoke of, it could lead to a joint venture, it could lead to acquiring an organization. WhatsApp was taken up by Meta. So you build strengths into your organization. You necessarily don't rebuild the entire wheel from scratch. And like we spoke of much earlier in the conversation today, omnichannel integration for that consistency of the customer experience is something which also needs to be thought through. The complexity of a business problem needs to be broken down. If there are certain strengths which certain individuals or certain teams have, you give those problems to them to solve, piece it all back together and solve your larger business problem. Maybe with some luck, you will be able to create something that is better. The sum of the parts will be better and will create something which is better than the answer you were seeking. It will become a much more value added output. And finally, about ambiguity. So ambiguity is stuff you don't know. You can't for sure every single time know that this is exactly and precisely how things will be in life. So how do you manage that? With the advent of digital, you have been given a tremendous strength today to be able to go out there, quickly test your problems and the solutions you are providing and see what comes of it. You can test the product's abilities, you can test which particular audiences, niches within audiences like your product, you can test how to improve the offering, and this obviously works hand in glove with your agile teams, and you can constantly keep calibrating what your product offering is. Your innovation becomes a company culture. You're constantly testing, constantly in research, constantly improving, and that also speaks of the versioning, the constant launches, the constant newness, the fresh ideas that you're putting out there, and you're seen as dynamic because you're seen as improving things. And given technology and the way it is moving, the future will be all about new news. And so therefore, are you part of that news? If you're not part of the news, you're an also ran. Nobody cares for you. You get thrown by the wayside. We are any which ways overburdened with a lot of information. So whoever is up front and center, that person is of relevance, else you fall by the wayside. Companies, organizations, managers have to start thinking on these lines, have to start approaching the entire aspect of being relevant through innovation, being relevant through testing, calibration continuously, and being around the customer. Because at the end of the day, you may be great at building certain technology products, but is it really solving the customer's problem? So your customer centricity, the probe into the customer's mind through data points, through human interactions, through expert inputs, through proper analysis anthropologically of how people are doing certain things, what are the reasons behind them. You have to keep constantly checking whether you're solving the problem, to what extent, is it something that people are liking, not liking, is there room for improvement, all of these factors, and we'll talk about these things when we get into the details of marketing. All of these factors keep you as that very, very doting husband to a wife who ensures that she's happy every single day of her life and she has the best of her life with that spouse. So the caring, doting husband is what marketing is to the consumer, right? And that is something which helps a marketer define their trajectory, define their path, define how they want to go about doing these things. So if you have these things set in your vision, if your mission goals are set that you will achieve this, you will constantly be working with technology, you will be innovative, you will be addressing customer centric problems and come up with innovative solutions for them. You are addressing these problems right from the get go, and on a continuous basis, and you are also talking about it, people see you for it, and that helps you really create that particular image. So, clear vision and mission goals will help you define all of these things the way you want to run them, the way people want to see you, and so therefore, it will give you the ability to have better decisions. Now, the agile teams you had, the decision making, we have spoken about how you have to not take all the decisions, you do not have to all the heavy lifting, get the right people for the right kind of task. And so therefore, your teams need to be decentralized. You need to put them out there so that they are able to take those particular decisions, they are able to be empowered and have the authority to take calls on the spot. And obviously, they are backed by data, they are backed by findings, they are backed by previous examples of how things have been going on. The forecasts are made on the basis of empirical evidence that exists. So, you take what is there and you prepare for what is to come, and you give people the ability to take those spot decisions without going up and down the value chain, going right up to the boss, getting the signature and down. You have to empower them with a certain level of capabilities, a certain level of decision making authority. So, that helps a leaner, quicker execution and a flatter organization overall. So, at the end of it, I would just like to leave you for today with the conclusion that VUCA environment is here to stay. There is no doubt about it, and it is only going to get more and more complex as we go forward. So, therefore, businesses need to take and internalize these realities, and they have to constantly find ways of working with these nuances. See, they do not have to just be there, they have to also make it big in the business space, right. So, before all of this is done, marketing is the one space that is like the gate. It is between the business and the customers outside, and it is that particular highway through which information flows from inside to out and back. So, therefore, knowing and appreciating this is the new normal is something that is key to the growth and prosperity of any organization and brand. And so, therefore, managers who learn this today and employ it immediately, they are going to be the business leaders of tomorrow. And with that, I come to a close of this particular module, and we will move forward, and together the next part will focus on the impact on business which VUCA brings. And with that note, thank you for being an attentive audience. I hope you liked it, and with your feedback, I will be able to improve further. Thank you so much.
Hello and welcome to this piece of literary snippet. We usually know William Shakespeare as the most revered figure in the history of English literature. But we often tend to forget that he has also been one of the most hated figures in literature. And here I am not talking only about those boys and girls who have to memorize long sections from Macbeth or King Lear or Julius Caesar before they can go and sit for their school or college exams. But I am also talking about people who are themselves quite famous authors. Tolstoy, for instance, considered the writings of Shakespeare to be, and I quote, crude, immoral, vulgar, and senseless. George Bernard Shaw absolutely loathed Shakespeare, as he did Homer. But perhaps no other criticism about Shakespeare is more damaging than the one which says that Shakespeare is a marvelous storyteller, provided someone has told him the story earlier. Now, this piece of criticism is particularly damaging because it is true. None of Shakespeare's plays contain any original story whatsoever. They are all written using pre-existing materials, pre-existing stories. Now, does that diminish the stature of Shakespeare as a dramatist? Well, I'll leave that for you to decide. See you in the next episode of Literary Snippets.